Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Dean Milam. Thank you, Jen of the Santa Barbara Public Library, and George for organizing everything and keeping us on track. We're really excited to be here. And so for the past 20 years, the two of us have collaborated on many things, but especially with working with AtPromise students. And so for 20 years, we've talked about our work with AtPromise students, and people will look at us and say, what are you talking about? What are AtPromise students?
So people are starting to get it. We have entire school districts now that are using AtPromise. We have principals, educators across the country that are using AtPromise as a framework. And it's not just semantics, folks. It's what you label students determines how you'll treat them. And so there's research that we've conducted, others have conducted, that shows that when students see students through a risk lens or even a trauma lens, they treat them as traumatized or they treat them as risks. And so another framework that we're thinking of and developing is from trauma-informed to emotion-informed. Because we're more than traumatized. Right? We have other emotions. We're happy. Okay, we might be traumatized, but we're also happy folks. And so that's important to consider. Here's an image of us working with 100 of our UCSB students, conducting a survey of 3,000 students, 2,000 students in 1 hour.
So I'll present a little bit about this research and findings with our AtPromise students. And so in a paper that we recently published, we found that for Latinx students, their networks of encouragement looked different than their white counterparts, for who encouraged them to enroll in advanced courses. And for the Latinx students, when we controlled for their GPA of a 3.0, they were less likely to be enrolled in these courses, the advanced courses. Additionally, we found that extended networks of support, so that's like the custodians, the secretaries, the other school personnel at the school, were more likely to encourage them to enroll in these courses and also to apply to colleges. And so then, more so than the teachers in the classroom that they work with every day. Similarly, 22 years ago when we were working in Berkeley, we conducted an ethnographic research study, and we found that at the middle school we worked at, it was the custodians, and it was the security guards that were encouraging the African American boys to read, to do their homework, to go to class when their teachers weren't connecting with them. And so the big finding here over the past 20 years is that for AtPromise students, teachers may not be connecting with the kids, but other school staff may be. So how can we work with schools and to prepare the entire schools to work with these students?
So for us, what's important is to think about the ways in which community engaged research works at a micro level, a meso level, and a macro level. So a micro level in that interaction with folks in the community and really getting them empowered and engaged to become agents of change for themselves and for the community. At the meso level, working with local stakeholders that have power over these young people. So these would be educators. And then at the macro level, thinking about policy. So we talked a little bit about the micro, working directly with youth. Now we're going to talk about the meso level, which would be sort of the engagement in changing the way that we think about and now educate our youth. So we created an intervention that we're going into Watts in LA with 40 high school push-out youths, so young people that have dropped out of school. How do we get them back into school? So we took some UCSB students with us, and we created this intervention And so this is a short video clip showing you a little bit of the intervention.
I remember going hungry. And I remember seeing my mom cry because she couldn't feed her kids. And I tell myself, man, I don't want to live like this anymore. This is a story of young people who have been left behind. Hey, man, I can't do this. William, 3 feet, baby. But it's also the story of America.
So this is just perfect timing because just 2 weeks ago, the California Governor Gavin Newsom signed into law AB 413, which states changing the label of at-risk to AtPromise in educational code, policy, and practice. So for years, along with education reformers, we've advocated for this change, and in 2011, in his book, Punished, Victor, over here, wrote, "AtPromise youth are those who have traditionally been labeled at risk, youth who have been marginalized, have marginalized themselves, or both."
So what are some solutions? This is a macro level, right? I mean, we collaborated with policymakers, with a lot of lawyers. A lot of lawyers. You want to change laws? Go hang out with lawyers. They'll go change laws. They will. They'll write it up. They'll write it up to make it like legit for policymakers. Because like we go to the state capitol and talk research. They're like, get out of here. You show up with a lawyer and the lawyer talks in their language, and they love it. So always pair up with a lawyer. Any lawyers in here? Raise your hand. No lawyers? Oh man, we gotta change things. We gotta, like, each of us, next time you come, you have to bring a lawyer friend with you. That's the only way we're gonna change the law for the next thing we wanna do. And by the way, we know this, the UC Santa Barbara needs a lot of policy support at the state capitol. So we need a lot of lawyer friends. So if you know any good lawyers that are your friends, please let me know afterwards, okay? All right, so solutions, 3 solutions, we have plenty, but schools as community serving institutions, changing the framework of how we think about schools, not just serving students academically. We run into lots of districts where there's counselors and they're like burnt out and there's only a couple of them, and then the school shuts down at 4 p.m. and everyone goes home and the lights turn off. And there's a lot of models out there where the lights should stay on, people should be there, counselors, social workers, therapists, mentors, BTDTs, been there, done that. You know, former gang members, former, you know whats that are now changed their life around and come and mentor. Really on the weekends, opening schools up, and really being the center, in our perspective, schools are the center of social change in our entire society. So let's keep them open and let's support them. It shouldn't just be teachers doing all this work, right? It should be an entire community. Social justice literacy, that we really make sure that not just our students are literate in social justice, you know, ethnic studies, etc., gender studies, sexuality studies, but also our teachers, our educators, right? That we provide the proper training. And you know, there's a big, beautiful movement for that kind of literacy, but there's a counter movement against it, as you know, in the local community. And so we have to find ways to support that social justice literacy movement. And then finally, really thinking about the ways we do research. Research matters, folks. When we go out and share our findings and we're talking in deficit language, those policymakers listen to us. Those probation officers listen to us. Those police officers listen to us. Those educators listen to us. And they repeat what we say. But they repeat it in a different, we have good intention, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they end up using our research and our discourse to push out our students. We found that time and time again here in Santa Barbara and in other parts of the state. So in conclusion, to best support our students that have been left behind, we have to think about the ways that we label them. We have to think about the ways that we think about our education institutions, not just as academic institutions, but community serving institutions.
Thank you.